First poll closings in Kentucky and Indiana. As of now, these two states are too early to call. We have our first projection of the night. Kentucky for Ronald Reagan. Second round of poll closing. We have some critical swing states that are now reporting, such as Florida, Virginia, and Georgia. We can call Indiana for Reagan, and it's 11 electoral votes. Kennedy's first win of the night is Vermont, and it's 3 electoral votes. We still have a long way to go in this race. Kennedy takes an early lead in Georgia, while Reagan takes the early lead in Florida and Virginia. As two battleground states, Florida and Georgia, are too early to call, we move to our 7:30 poll closings with the battleground states of Ohio, North Carolina, and West Virginia, which has become surprisingly competitive in this race. Reagan takes the early lead in this race. Kennedy is leading in West Virginia, and Reagan is leading in Ohio and North Carolina, as of now. Another Reagan win in South Carolina, which had the potential to be competitive in this race. Kennedy has taken the lead in Virginia, while Reagan takes the lead in Georgia. We have a huge dump of poll closings coming in right now. Several battlegrounds are going to start reporting, like Texas, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. As expected, Kennedy takes D.C. We can also call Rhode Island for Kennedy. Kennedy has won his home state, as expected. Meanwhile, we can project that Reagan will win North and South Dakota. Reagan also wins Deep Red, Oklahoma. Reagan leading in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Texas. Kennedy takes the lead in North Carolina and Florida. Kennedy also takes an early lead in Missouri, a potential swing state. Reagan leads the electoral vote count with 41 electoral votes to Kennedy's 21. We can project that Reagan will win Alabama and Mississippi, sweeping these southern states. Kennedy will win Maryland and its 10 electoral votes. Kennedy will win the key state of Virginia. Reagan leading in most swing states at this time, a potentially good sign for his campaign. Reagan takes the lead from Kennedy in Florida and North Carolina, while Pennsylvania stays with him for now. Kennedy now takes the lead in Ohio, buoyed by urban areas. Kennedy leading in Kansas, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, while Michigan and Ohio swing to Reagan again. Reagan keeps lead in liberal New Jersey. Kennedy is catching up to Reagan with several blue state victories. We have several battleground states starting to report, like Arizona, Colorado, and Wisconsin. In a major victory for the Reagan campaign, Florida has been projected for Ronald Reagan and its 30 electoral votes. We can also project the state of Wyoming for Reagan. Kennedy will win New Jersey and its 14 electoral votes, a sizable northeastern prize. Kennedy will also win Maine's 1st district. We can project Illinois for Kennedy, another sizable blue state. The Electoral College is neck and neck. Reagan leads in western states, including the key states of Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado. Reagan continues his lead in Missouri, Kansas, Texas, and North Carolina. Kennedy takes an early lead in Louisiana and also leads in West Virginia and Pennsylvania. Reagan will win the state of Kansas, continuing his dominance of the American West. We can project that Reagan will also win Arkansas, cutting off Kennedy's path to victory in through the South. We can project the state of New York for Kennedy, boosting his electoral college numbers with its 28 electoral votes. We can project Kennedy to also win Maine statewide. Kennedy has now pulled ahead of Ronald Reagan in the Electoral College with key blue state victories in Illinois and New York. Kennedy now takes the lead in Colorado and New Mexico, while Reagan holds on to Arizona for now. Reagan also takes the lead in the key state of Pennsylvania. We can project Louisiana for Reagan, further solidifying the South for Reagan. The key race of Ohio has been called for Reagan, a huge win that gives the Reagan campaign hope. Reagan pulls ahead again. However, Kennedy now leads in Texas, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. Several mountain states will now be reporting. Reagan will win the conservative state of Idaho. Reagan will also win Nebraska statewide. We can project Missouri for Reagan. We can also project Utah for Reagan as he sweeps the mountain states. A key Midwestern state, Minnesota, can be projected for Reagan. Reagan widens his lead over Kennedy, but loses lead in most battleground states, including in Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, Michigan, and North Carolina. Early voting in Montana is also favoring Kennedy. Now, let's turn our focus back to Texas. With 40 electoral votes, the Lone Star State is one of the biggest prizes of the night, and it remains too close to call let's break. Down what we're seeing so far. Kennedy is outperforming expectations in major metro and border areas with high turnout among young voters and Hispanic communities. Meanwhile, Reagan is dominating in West Texas and the Panhandle as expected, with margins over 70% in some counties. The suburban areas outside Houston are showing strong Republican support, helping offset Kennedy's urban gains. Kennedy's path to victory in Texas hinges on whether the urban vote continues to favor him by large margins. If Reagan holds on to his lead as more votes come in from conservative areas, Texas could stay red, but this is far from over. Stay with us as we monitor this critical battleground. It's 11 p.m. and the race continues to tighten as more results come in from across the country. Here's the latest update on tonight's election. Reagan secures the conservative stronghold of Montana. Reagan also wins the crucial and competitive district in Maine. Kennedy secures New Hampshire, keeping his momentum strong in the Northeast. Several states are either too close or too early to call at this hour. The race is tightening as more results roll in. Kennedy holds a solid lead in several key states, including California, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. However, Reagan maintains strong leads in key southern and western states like Texas, Georgia, and Arizona. With over 200 electoral votes still in play, the election is far from decided. Now let's zoom in on one of the most closely watched states of the night, Georgia. Historically, Georgia has been a nail-biter in presidential elections, with results often coming down to the final few percentage points. Let's break down what's happening here tonight. Georgia has a significant African-American electorate, and Kennedy is likely benefiting from strong turnout in this demographic, particularly in areas like DeKalb and Fulton counties. Kennedy is also outperforming expectations in the Atlanta metro area, which is a rapidly growing Democratic-leaning region. The appeal to younger, more progressive voters, especially in the suburbs, is a key factor in closing the gap in Georgia. Reagan is maintaining a strong hold in Georgia's rural counties, where conservatives still dominate. He is winning with margins of 60% plus in places like the northern and southern parts of the state. The suburban areas outside Atlanta, such as Cobb and Gwinnett, while competitive, are leaning towards Reagan, especially in areas with strong traditional conservative values. Georgia is proving to be exactly the kind of battleground state we expected. With only a small percentage of the vote left to report, the outcome could hinge on a few key districts. If Kennedy can continue his momentum in urban and suburban areas, he might just flip Georgia. But Reagan is still holding strong in rural Georgia, and a late surge could secure the state for him. Let's turn our attention now to Pennsylvania, one of the most crucial swing states in this election. With 19 electoral votes at stake, Pennsylvania is once again proving to be a key battleground in this tight race between Reagan and Kennedy. Let's break down the current situation. Kennedy is performing strongly in Philadelphia, a Democratic stronghold where he's benefiting from high turnout in both African American and younger voters. He is also leading in college towns like Pittsburgh and State College, which have become key Democratic strongholds due to the growing young progressive populations. Pennsylvania's working-class voters, particularly those in unions, have traditionally been a swing demographic. Kennedy's pro-union stances are helping him in these areas. Reagan is showing strong numbers in Pennsylvania's rural areas, especially in the Rust Belt regions like Scranton and Erie. These traditionally blue-collar working-class areas have leaned more Republican in recent years. The suburbs around Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are split, but Reagan is slightly ahead in many of these areas, especially among moderate Republicans and older voters who favor his conservative policies. As the last few precincts come in, Pennsylvania is still a nail-biter. With only a small margin separating the two candidates, the final results will depend on how those urban votes continue to come in and whether Reagan can hold his ground in the rural areas. With so much at stake, this is one state that could decide the entire election. A major win for Kennedy, as he takes the biggest prize of the night so far, securing California's 54 electoral votes. Kennedy has secured the Pacific Northwest state of Washington, continuing his dominance in the West. Reagan holds on to Iowa, securing another battleground state and adding to his momentum in the Midwest. Tennessee stays red as Reagan secures the state with a solid lead. The race continues to remain tight, with both candidates winning key states. Kennedy has made major gains in the West and on the West Coast with California, but Reagan is holding his ground in crucial battlegrounds like Pennsylvania. Let's now turn our focus to Arizona, another crucial battleground state that has been swinging back and forth throughout the night. Reagan has held a steady lead for much of the evening, but Kennedy has had a few resurgences as the night progresses. Let's break down what's happening here in Arizona. Kennedy has made strong inroads in Arizona's urban centers, especially in Phoenix and Tucson. These areas, which are home to a diverse electorate, have seen an uptick in Democratic turnout tonight, particularly among younger voters and Latino communities. Arizona has a sizable independent voter base, and Kennedy has been performing well among moderates and those disillusioned with the Republicans. Reagan has maintained his lead thanks to the solid support he's receiving from Arizona's conservative base. Rural areas and small towns across the state have been overwhelmingly in his corner, especially in the northern and eastern parts of the state. Reagan's policies and conservative platform are playing well with Arizona's older population, especially retirees. With just a small percentage of the vote left to report, this one remains a close race. Reagan is holding a narrow but steady lead thanks to his rural advantage, but Kennedy's push in urban areas could still swing the state in his direction. Arizona is a state that could go either way, and every last vote will count in the final tally. We now turn our attention to Nevada, another critical battleground state where the race remains tight as we approach the final vote count. Reagan has dominated the vast rural regions of the state, particularly in counties like Elko, Churchill, and Nye, where conservative and libertarian-leaning voters have turned out in full force for him. Kennedy has built a strong base in Las Vegas, where a large share of the state's population resides. The city's growing Latino community, younger voters, and union workers, especially in the hospitality and service industries, have leaned toward Kennedy. The suburbs around Reno have been competitive, with Kennedy performing well among moderates and independents. The remaining ballots in Las Vegas and Reno will likely determine the final outcome. If Kennedy can close the gap with late reporting urban votes, he could make Nevada a toss-up in the final moments. Kennedy is now approaching the magic number of 270 electoral votes, while Reagan seems to be falling ever more behind. As we approach the final stretch of the night, one of the biggest prizes on the map remains too close to call: Texas. With its 40 electoral votes, Texas is a crucial battleground that both Reagan and Kennedy are fighting hard to win. Kennedy has seen a strong turnout among young voters, minorities, and suburban moderates. In Harris County, Houston, and Travis County, Austin, Kennedy is winning by significant margins, and Democratic strongholds are reporting high turnout. Kennedy has outperformed expectations in heavily Latino areas along the border, including Hidalgo, Cameron, and El Paso counties, where he has won 60–70% of the vote. Reagan has built an overwhelming lead in rural Texas, with some counties reporting upwards of 75% support for him. Reagan has maintained strong numbers in traditionally conservative suburban areas, keeping Kennedy from making major inroads. As we head deeper into the night, Wisconsin remains one of the most closely watched battleground states. With 10 electoral votes up for grabs, both Kennedy and Reagan have been locked in a fierce contest, and we are now approaching the final stages of vote counting. Kennedy has dominated in Milwaukee and Dane counties, pulling in 70% plus in Dane County and a strong 60% plus in Milwaukee. Kennedy has performed well in western Wisconsin's college towns of La Crosse and Eau Claire, securing margins that could help counteract rural Reagan gains. He has also made inroads in traditionally conservative Waukesha County. Reagan has been running up the score in rural counties, but are there enough votes left to overtake Kennedy? Kennedy is clinging to a narrow lead, but Reagan's rural strength is keeping this state in play. We expect a call soon, so stay with us for the latest updates. As the night progresses, the state of Georgia has become a focal point in this election. Kennedy has taken a narrow lead. However, given Georgia's history of razor-thin margins, this race is far from decided. Kennedy has secured substantial margins in Atlanta's core counties, with Fulton and DeKalb reporting over 80% in his favor. High turnout among African-American voters and young professionals has bolstered his numbers. Traditionally, Republican suburbs of Cobb and Gwinnett have continued their trend towards the Democrats, with Kennedy leading in both counties by narrow margins. Kennedy is performing well in the coastal region, securing approximately 58% of the vote in Savannah. Reagan maintains a stronghold in rural Georgia, with many counties reporting 70% or more in his favor. His message resonates with conservative voters concerned about agriculture and traditional values. He is also leading in southern Georgia, in counties like Thomas and Lowndes, reflecting his appeal to voters in the agricultural sector and small-town communities. Reagan's support in the north is robust, with counties like Gilmer and Fannin giving him over 75% of the vote. A significant number of absentee ballots, particularly from urban and suburban areas, are yet to be counted. These could favor Kennedy and widen his lead. Georgia also has a considerable military population, and late-arriving military ballots could influence the outcome, potentially favoring Reagan. Kennedy secures Hawaii, maintaining the state's long-standing Democratic trend. Kennedy clinches Colorado, reflecting the state's recent Democratic leanings. Several states are still counting mail-in ballots, which may favor Kennedy, especially in urban areas. High turnout in remaining precincts, particularly in urban and suburban areas, could sway results. As we approach the early hours of the morning, the state of Michigan remains a critical battleground in this election. With 15 electoral votes at stake, Kennedy holds a narrow lead over Reagan. As the most populous county, Detroit's remaining votes could significantly bolster Kennedy's lead if the current trend continues. So far, Kennedy leads with 70% of the vote. Kennedy holds a slight advantage in Oakland, while Reagan leads in Macomb. These suburban areas are traditional bellwethers. Their final counts could sway the state's outcome. Reagan leads narrowly with 52% in Kent County, home to Grand Rapids. A traditionally Republican area, any shift here could indicate broader state trends. In Genesee County, home to Flint, Kennedy leads with 65% of the vote. Strong Democratic performance here is crucial for Kennedy's statewide success. As we delve into the early hours of the morning, the state of Texas, with its substantial 40 electoral votes, has become a focal point in this tightly contested election. In Harris County, home to Houston, Kennedy leads with 58% of the vote. As the most populous county, Harris's remaining votes could bolster Kennedy's totals. Kennedy holds 65% of the vote in Dallas County, a Democratic stronghold. Final counts here are crucial for Kennedy. Historically a Republican area, Reagan leads narrowly with 52% in Tarrant County, home to Fort Worth. Reagan leads with approximately 60% in Denton and Collin counties. In the Rio Grande, Kennedy averages 55–60% of the vote in the counties there, areas with significant Latino populations who are voting for Kennedy in droves. Urban counties like Harris and Dallas have a substantial number of mail-in ballots yet to be counted, which historically favored Democratic candidates. Remaining unreported rural areas may lean heavily toward Reagan, potentially expanding his lead. We now turn our attention to North Carolina, where the race is tightening up as we head into the final stages of the night. With 95% of precincts reporting, Reagan has taken a lead, currently holding about 51.5% of the vote to Kennedy's 47.9%. Right now, the remaining votes are coming in from some of the more rural areas of North Carolina, particularly those in the western and eastern parts of the state. As we've seen throughout the night, these rural areas tend to lean heavily Republican, which is why Reagan has managed to pull ahead despite Kennedy's strong performance in urban centers like Charlotte and Raleigh. We will continue to watch closely as some of the remaining suburban areas could shift the numbers slightly, though it's unlikely to be enough for Kennedy to overcome the deficit. We have a major development in the battleground state of Pennsylvania. With 95% of the vote now counted, Ronald Reagan has taken a very narrow lead over John F. Kennedy. However, this race is far from over, as thousands of votes remain uncounted in key counties across the state. York County, a deep red county where Reagan is winning by over 20 points. The majority of votes here have been counted, but some final precincts could add slightly to his total. Reagan is also leading in Lancaster County, a traditional Republican stronghold where Reagan is maintaining a comfortable margin. Westmoreland County was a former swing county that has trended Republican in recent elections. Reagan is winning here by double digits, helping him offset Kennedy's urban strength. Kennedy has a commanding lead in Philadelphia County, winning over 75% of the vote here. However, with 5% of the vote still outstanding, particularly from absentee and mail-in ballots, this could help him close the gap. In Allegheny County, Kennedy holds a solid lead here with roughly 60% of the vote, but like Philadelphia, there are still uncounted ballots that could cut into Reagan's statewide lead. In Bucks County, Kennedy is leading by just a few hundred votes and could go either way as the night goes on. Luzerne County, a key working-class county that has swung between parties in recent elections. Reagan currently leads, but final votes from more populated areas could shift the margin. We will continue to track Pennsylvania throughout the night. Stay with us as we bring you the latest developments in this critical battleground state. We now turn our focus to West Virginia, an unusual swing state in this election. For years, West Virginia has been one of the most Republican states in the nation, but tonight it has proven to be much more competitive. While both candidates have held the lead at different points in the night, Kennedy has maintained a narrow advantage for some time now. With almost all votes counted, we are closing in on a final result. West Virginia has a strong union presence, and Kennedy's populist, working-class-focused economic message has resonated with voters here. Kennedy has performed better than expected in coal mining areas and among blue-collar workers who typically vote Republican, like in Raleigh County and Cabell County, home to Huntington. Kennedy is also solidly winning Monongalia County, bolstered by college voters. With just a handful of votes left to count, Reagan is hoping that late-reporting conservative areas can put him over the top, while Kennedy is counting on his strong performance in labor-heavy counties to hold on to his lead. We have two major projections to announce at this hour. After a long and closely fought battle, we can now call the state of Texas for Ronald Reagan. With its 40 electoral votes, Texas solidifies Reagan's standing in this race. Meanwhile, in a surprising battleground, John F. Kennedy has won the state of West Virginia, securing a crucial working-class victory in the Mountain State. Texas now called for Reagan and West Virginia for Kennedy, both candidates are one step closer to victory. But this race is far from over. Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia remain uncalled, and each of these states could decide the next president. We turn our attention back to Wisconsin, where the presidential race has taken a pivotal turn. With 95% of precincts reporting, Ronald Reagan has overtaken John F. Kennedy, holding a narrow lead in this crucial battleground state. Kennedy has secured 75% if the vote in Milwaukee County, but with 99% of the vote in there are minimal outstanding votes left to count. Same thing in Dane County, home to Madison, where Kennedy has taken 70% of the vote with 99% reporting. A notable mention is Racine County, a suburb of Milwaukee, where Kennedy holds a lead of just a few hundred votes over Reagan. Reagan leads with about 65% of the vote in Waukesha County, another suburb of Milwaukee. With 98% of precincts reporting, a small number of votes remain uncounted, potentially adding slightly to Reagan's total. Reagan holds a narrow lead with 52% in Brown County, home to Green Bay. Approximately 96% of precincts have reported, indicating some votes are still outstanding. As we continue our coverage, we now turn to Nevada, where Senator John F. Kennedy has maintained a steady lead for much of the night. However, vote counting in the state has been moving at a slower pace compared to other battlegrounds. Clark County, the largest county in the state, and a Democratic stronghold, Kennedy is winning here with 56% of the vote. The remaining uncounted ballots here are mostly mail-ins, which could slightly expand his lead. In Washoe County, which is a more competitive county, but Kennedy is leading with 51%. Historically, Washoe is a bellwether county, and Kennedy's lead here is a positive sign for his campaign. Reagan is dominating in rural areas like Elko, Churchill, Nye, and Douglas counties, carrying some with 70–75% of the vote. While some precincts are still reporting, they likely won't provide enough votes to overcome Kennedy's urban advantage. With 94% of the vote counted, Kennedy's campaign is feeling confident, while Reagan's team is hoping for a strong final turnout from the remaining rural votes. We'll keep monitoring Nevada closely and bring you updates as the count continues. We turn our attention to Georgia, where the presidential race remains exceptionally close. Kennedy holds a razor-thin lead over Reagan, with almost all votes counted. Kennedy has secured approximately 73% of the vote in Fulton County, home to Atlanta. This urban county has significantly bolstered Kennedy statewide. Kennedy holds a substantial lead in the suburban Atlanta county of DeKalb, capturing around 83% of the vote. Kennedy leads with about 56% of the vote in Cobb County. This suburban shift toward the Democratic candidate has been pivotal in the tight statewide race. Kennedy also holds a lead in Chatham County, home to Savannah, with 58% of the vote. Reagan has secured approximately 70% of the vote in Forsyth County. This rural county's strong Republican turnout has helped offset Kennedy's urban gains. He also leads with about 71% in Paul County. This county's conservative base has been a reliable source of support for Reagan. As we approach the final stages of vote counting in Georgia, Kennedy's razor-thin lead places him in a precarious position. With 99% of votes counted, both campaigns are anxiously awaiting the final results, understanding that Georgia's 16 electoral votes could be decisive in this election. We have two major projections at this hour. Ronald Reagan will win North Carolina, adding 16 electoral votes to his total. John F. Kennedy will win the state of Nevada, securing its 6 electoral votes. With Nevada now called for Kennedy and North Carolina for Reagan, we are getting closer to the finish line. However, with Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin still undecided, neither candidate has crossed the threshold to win the presidency just yet. As we approach 2:40 a.m., we turn our attention to Michigan, where Kennedy has maintained a narrow lead throughout the morning. With 97% of precincts reporting, the race remains too close to call. In Wayne County, Kennedy has secured approximately 68% of the vote here. With 98% of precincts reporting, the remaining votes are expected to slightly bolster his lead. In Oakland County, a suburb of Detroit, Kennedy holds a narrow lead with 52% of the vote. This county has been a bellwether in recent elections. In Washtenaw County, home to Ann Arbor, Kennedy sees a strong 72% of the vote here. Reagan leads with 54% in Macomb County, another suburb of Detroit. Known for its swing voter population, Macomb's results are closely watched. in Kent County, home to Grand Rapids, Reagan leads with a sizable 55%. Michigan law requires that all mail-in ballots be received by Election Day. The majority have been counted, but a small number remain, primarily from urban areas favoring Kennedy. Some rural precincts, which tend to favor Reagan, are among the last to report. Their impact may narrow Kennedy's lead, but are unlikely to overturn it entirely. We have three major projections at this hour. Ronald Reagan will win the state of Wisconsin, securing its 10 electoral votes. We can project that Kennedy will win the state of Michigan. Kennedy will also win the crucial battleground of Georgia. We now enter the most dramatic phase of this election, with Kennedy at 266 electoral votes and Reagan at 253. The entire race now hinges on Pennsylvania. The candidate who wins Pennsylvania's 19 electoral votes will win the presidency. At this moment, Kennedy is leading by a razor-thin margin, but the race remains too close to call, with votes still being counted in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and key suburban counties. This will come down to the wire. It all comes down to this. After a long and intense night, the presidential race will be decided right here in Pennsylvania. With almost all votes counted, Kennedy leads by approximately 15,000 votes statewide, a razor-thin margin in a state with millions of votes cast. But it is still too close to call. With 19 electoral votes, Pennsylvania will determine the next president of the United States. In Philadelphia County, Kennedy is winning with 78%, about 2% left to count, mostly mail-in ballots, which favor Kennedy. Kennedy is leading with 61% in Allegheny County, home to Pittsburgh, with less than 1% having a minimal impact on the final count. Montgomery County, this is a key suburban county that has leaned toward Kennedy, helping him offset rural losses. In York County, Reagan is winning with 64%, keeping him competitive statewide. Reagan winning with 66% in Lancaster County. Reagan leads with 62% of the vote in Westmoreland County, but Kennedy's numbers in Pittsburgh help neutralize its effect. Reagan is also slightly leading by 1.5% in Luzerne County, home to Wilkes-Barre, a critical blue-collar county. Kennedy has also taken the lead in Erie County, a critical swing county. Ladies and gentlemen, at 3:50 a.m., we have a monumental projection. John F. Kennedy has been elected as the next president of the United States. This historic victory comes as Kennedy secures Pennsylvania's 19 electoral votes, pushing him over the required threshold to clinch the presidency. Throughout the night, Pennsylvania stood as the decisive battleground, with